This is Popular Front, a podcast focused on the niche details of modern warfare and underreported conflict with me, Jake Hanrahan. In this episode, we're speaking to a lad named Sean. He's part of the movement to defend the Atlanta forest. If you don't know what that is, there's been a large-scale protest and significant violence amidst the police and people that don't want 90 acres of a forest in Atlanta bulldozed so that a police training facility can be built in this place. This culminated recently, a week ago, when a man named Tort, one of the forest defenders, was shot and killed by the police. The media is mostly giving the police a platform to say what they think, so we wanted to hear from the other side. Support us at patreon.com/popularfront. So unfortunately, very recently, a young man was killed by police in Atlanta whilst trying to stop the essential demolition of the forest there. We'll get onto that, but before we do, can you please explain to us what is this whole movement around the Atlanta forest? Why are there people there trying to stop this going ahead?
There's like dozens of reasons why people are trying to defend this forest, and not all of them overlap, but I'll try and just briefly explain the situation, which is after the George Floyd uprising, just like a few months after the last round of tear gas was done being shot by the Atlanta police, they announced that they were going to build a massive new police training facility, and that massive new police training facility was going to be located in hundreds of acres of woods, which was the largest intact urban tree canopy in the city, and it was going to be the largest police training facility in the U.S. And immediately after this announcement, there's a lot of activation from people who'd been a part of the George Floyd uprising and others to get prepared to kind of say, how can we stop this thing? And how can we stop this thing at any cost? And we kind of, from the beginning, expected like the political movement of trying to get the city council people to not approve it. Like these kinds of things wouldn't work, and we would have to move to on the ground resistance and also more creative resistance of targeting the contractors and the construction workers and the funders, the people who would make it possible to build it in the forest, target them outside of the forest and pressure them to stop work on the facility. So that movement really kicked off in May 2021 with like a big barbecue in the woods and like an explanation of what the plan was for the forest. And in addition to this massive police training facility that's on one side of the creek, targeting hundreds of acres, there's also a public park that was kind of adjacent, and a part of the public park had been swapped in a land swap deal. It was really complicated, and I could get into the weeds of it if you want. But basically, the county had given away public park to a Hollywood mogul as a real estate deal. And so this like public park was kind of like the entrance into the woods for like everyone. And so there's also been a battle to keep this part of the forest away from the Hollywood mogul's hands. And he's been down there personally to the forest a few times with like crazy construction crews, threatening people with guns. He had his personal truck burnt over the summer of 2022. And so it's like there's technically two properties, but it's connected forest.
So is this movement against the fact there's going to be a police training facility in place of the forest? That's what they want. Or is it more an environmental resistance thing? Or is it a bit of both?
I think the strength of the movement is that it ties those two together. It says, demolishing the forest and building the police training facility is a part of the same nightmare vision of some of the leaders of the world as it is now. They kind of want to ignore climate change, ignore income inequality, say we can just keep doing what we've been doing and we'll just have more police in place to keep everyone in check. And so the movement has been strong because we've said, it makes sense that these two things go together, destroying the forest and building police facilities. And we oppose both equally.
And how big is this facility they want to build?
It's 90 acres.
90 acres?
Yeah. Which, it's the largest.
That's a lot.
In the US. It would include a whole mock city for like urban riot suppression training. And so that's where the moniker Cop City comes from. And a firing range, bomb testing range, a burn building, like a whole campus and dormitory area for police. Just everything, $90 million, 85 acres of police training.
And give us an idea of what kind of nature will be destroyed in this 90 acres if this thing goes ahead.
Yeah, so the land was previously a prison farm for the city of Atlanta, where as a part of the movement from like slavery, when slavery was abolished, there's replaced like by prison slavery, right? So quality of life crimes, if you like were littering or loitering, you could be sent to this prison farm in the early 1900s. And it's like it's supposed to be allegedly a nicer prison, whatever. You just farm, but really all the crops were kept and used by the city. So it was always a farm. Or for like 100 years it was a farm, and then it was closed down in really the 90s. And since then it's been a regenerating forest, which it's really important, because forests can't become old growth forests if they're cut down while they're growing, and regenerating forests really pull down a lot of carbon from the atmosphere and become generators of biodiversity. So as it is now, there's like some trees that are huge, massive, been around for a long time. And then there's a lot of young trees around as well. Some like citizen scientist type people have documented the biodiversity in the area. There's beavers, coyotes, deer, rare species of salamanders, hundreds of birds, songbirds, migrating birds use the area. It's really, when you're in there, you don't feel like you're in a city. You feel like you're in a woodland, and there's creatures all around you.
So they're trying to expand the tree cover. It's a regeneration forest. So how did they even get permission to bulldoze all of this? Because presumably someone from the state said, yeah, this is an area that needs regenerating. How can they then reverse that and say, actually, no, bulldoze it down and get rid of all of the wildlife within 90 acres? How was that even possible?
That's a great question. We've been asking the same thing ourselves. The city of Atlanta released this report in 2017 called the Atlanta City Design. And they looked at this area and they're like, this is one of the lungs of the city. This woodland is crucial to air quality, to flood control, to general quality of life in the city. It's one of the lungs. And that was this official city report. And then just 4 years later, they come out and they say, well, actually, we own the land as the city, and maybe it would be best if we bulldozed it and gave it to the police and turned it into a police training facility. And this was massively unpopular, but Atlanta has this particular mechanism of politics. They call it the Atlanta Way, which is essentially white business leaders work with the Black political class to run the city as they see fit, without really any input from the citizens. And so they, got together and they decided this is how they needed to respond to the George Floyd uprising. So by making this announcement, to help police morale, as they said. And they didn't really care what opposition there was to it, so they just rammed it through.
Do you know which company has been paid to then build this facility? I'm just speculating, but I imagine this 180 decision making will probably have a lot to do with that company and kickbacks they might give to whoever it was that decided actually it doesn't matter that the lungs, quote, of our city can be destroyed.
So the main company that is contracted to build it is this contractor, Brassfield and Gorey, which is one of the largest construction firms in the southeast of the U.S. Some of the executives of Brassfield and Gorey also sit on the board of the Atlanta Police Foundation, which is the nonprofit that's fundraising to build the facility. So there's just, a direct overlap between this construction company, Brassfield and Gorey, and the Atlanta Police Foundation. And there's been some other companies that were involved. There's one, Reason Young, who was initially kind of contracted to do some of the land clearing, and they have since dropped out of the contract. They are no longer working on the facility. I think they've chosen to do the right thing based on some of the pressure that was applied to them by different parts of the movement. And there's been a ton of actions against Brassfield and Gorey as well.
Interesting. So the movement to defend this forest was set up. How long have people been there, and what kind of measures have they taken, if you can be specific, in making sure that this quote unquote cop city has not gone ahead?
Yeah, so there's been people permanently on the ground since November of 2021, so over a year now. There has been a number of different camp cycles that have come out. At first, there's fairly public camps, fairly public infrastructure. Those were destroyed pretty quickly by police. So then camps moved farther into the woods. And then when the cops who kind of come on like a weekly or monthly basis, come through, try and chase people out of camps, and then destroy like water, destroy tents, all this kind of stuff. So then people began constructing tree houses and tree sits. And when cops come through the woods to try and clear people out, just climb up in a tree, keep your essential stuff with you up there. The cops didn't really want to climb up the trees and chase people out. And so people were able to kind of sit out these police operations. And having people on the ground also meant that anytime construction equipment of any kind showed up, there was both people there to try and prevent it from doing any work, and to also send out, notice to the larger city network that is supportive of the movement. And so people could also come from outside the forest to work, help protect the perimeter and everything. There's been, a handful of days that construction crews have showed up. Very few of those days have they been able to do any work for an extended period of time. Even when they have police escorts, usually they're kind of stopped from going farther. There is also like the main entrances have barricades up for most of the days. The public entrance is occasionally barricaded depending on the situation, or otherwise it's just open as a public park. And then there's also been some construction equipment that has been brought into the woods and used to destroy trees. There's later been communiques discussing that it was burned when it was returned to the place that it originated from. So outside of the woods, where it had been used, it was arsoned.
There's a larger network.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The, on the ground forest resistance in these woods is big and very important, but there's also a massive network that exists around the city that does all kinds of other actions as well.
And what kind of network is this? I know I mean, the police have literally been calling people terrorists. But who are these people? They're anarchists, like militants or whatever, or they're this or they're that, or they're just ecologists. Who are they? I haven't seen much on who these people actually are, like politically, other than they want to defend the forest or whatever.
Yeah, there's for sure there's some anarchists. There's also like a lot of mountain bike trails through these woods. So the mountain bikers are on board, ecologists, the local music scenes, both the like underground rave scene and the hardcore and DIY punk scene have been really supportive and like a big part of it. And there's been huge shows in the woods run by generators with hundreds of people attending them, and also like benefit shows and info shows outside of the woods. There's also been, just local neighborhood groups involved and some community schools where the kids have been in the forest also, learning about it and learning about their neighborhood woods. And really, like when you drive around the city of Atlanta, you just see yard signs, defend the forest, stop Cop City, everywhere you go. Every shop, practically every coffee shop, every cool coffee shop, has a poster up.
So would you say it's fair to say that your average local person in Atlanta knows about this, and there is actual local opposition to this thing? The reason I ask is sometimes I feel like movements like this don't fully represent what the people in the area actually think. Often people just don't care. But would you say this actually is like quite a local thing? Like people actually care about this? Because it sounds like it does to me. And I watched, shout out to Rose Warfare. He did a little doc on it, a little dispatch, and it seemed that people like locals actually were concerned about this. Like not just people that are part of like a movement to stop it. What do you reckon? How do you see it?
Yeah, I would say like it's a very local thing to begin with, and I think the like specificity of the local support has made it possible for also the like national attention that's been placed upon it, but it's not like this neighborhood, these areas around it, these aren't like big neighborhoods, big well-known areas, but the people who live there have like really care about it, and have made such a big deal out of it that people now from all across the country kind of can see themselves in the struggle, or like see the two different futures in the struggle. One, bulldoze the forest, build facilities for police. Two, protect the woods and rethink about what it means to live in an urban place while maintaining ecology of the area.
Yeah. Unfortunately, things have gotten violent. Someone has been killed. Talk us through that. How did it get to this situation where the police have literally opened fire on someone?
Yeah, it's very tragic death. It's really hit a lot of people hard. Tortuguita's killing. It's only been a week and a day since it happened, and everything's been happening so fast. It's just hard to even really reflect on it. But there's been, there's a dramatic escalation by police starting in December of 2022, where for the first time they came through in a raid and used like chemical weapons against people, and also climbed up trees with arborists to pull people out of tree sits. And then so on that day, which was December 13th, 2022, probably like half a dozen or more police agencies all formed a massive perimeter around the woods, went through, extracted 6 people from the woods and charged them all with domestic terrorism, which is just ridiculous charges. Some of these people were accused of trespassing and domestic terrorism. So like that's their only charges, is that the crime they committed of trespassing was indicative that they were domestic terrorists.
So wait there, sorry, but Molotovs, it wasn't because of Molotovs thrown or anything at that point, was it not? Because the police are saying that's what it is. Was that afterwards or at the same time?
There was Molotovs were thrown in May of
Right.
2022, and no one has been arrested and accused of throwing Molotovs. You know, no one was caught for that, and so they're just trying to collectively punish people for these actions by just pinning anyone that they caught in the woods with domestic terrorism by just associating them with acts against the police that have occurred in the woods.
And that is a big charge, especially in America. The authorities come down very hard on people that are environmentally radical. We know with the Green Scare in the 2000s, people got really, really serious sentences in prison. So that's a big deal. So the police came through, and when you say they came in through a raid, what did they do?
They fanned out through the woods in groups, like tactical groups, 5 or 6. When they identified people in tree houses, they basically surrounded the tree houses and were shooting pepper balls and rubber bullets at people, and then had arborists climb up there, kind of cut away all the limbs out of the tree around the tree house, and then forcibly grab people out of these tree houses and bring them down and detain them. And then once these people had been extracted from the tree sits and removed and arrested, they also would bulldoze the trees. So while this was going on, Tort was in one of these tree houses and was one of the ones who was able to successfully resist the police. They were not removed from a tree sit on these days, and they were actually live streaming at one point on their Instagram while being shot at with rubber bullets while they were in a treehouse. They were just calmly chilling up there. But at another time, a day or two later, while they had left their treehouse, someone bulldozed it, so they knocked it down. So they no longer had a place up in the trees to stay. And so then in January, when the police kind of repeated this raid, same number of agencies, same number of police decked out in, full military gear, rifles, camouflage, Bearcats, all this going on. They're going through the woods and encountered Tort at some point and shot and killed him. And also a Georgia State trooper was shot during this interaction. But there is no witnesses to what happened other than the police. And the police didn't have any body cameras on, so there's no footage. What happened? There's just the word of the Georgia State Patrol and no one else.
And what are the cops saying? Why? How are they trying to why? What are they saying? Why did they do this? What is their reason for shooting Tort?
According to the police, they encountered Tort in a tent, and Tort didn't reply to their orders and opened fire on an officer. But the police scanner makes no mention of encountering an armed suspect at any point in the woods, or really that the fact that they shot and killed someone until a while after reports of the gunfire. But yeah, Tort was staying on the ground and not in the trees because their treehouse had been destroyed, and so that's the claim from the Georgia police. The police agency that's involved in investigating what happened is also the police agency that was involved in planning the raid on the woods. So they're just investigating themselves. I'm sure they'll find no police wrongdoing, as they always do.
Mm-hmm.
And we're left with grieving the loss of Tort, of a friend.
So Tort was unarmed.
According to the GBI and the police, they found a gun registered to Tort. It's legal in the U.S. to own a gun and carry it on you at all times.
No, of course, I'm certainly not against that. I'm just saying, what's there? Are they? Sorry, maybe I misunderstood. But are the police saying what are they're saying he fired at them or what? I'm confused about that bit.
Yeah, that's what they're claiming.
And so then, how did this state trooper get shot? Is that do we think that's a crossfire from police, or are they claiming Tort did that as well?
They're claiming that Tort hit the trooper, but yeah, it's very possible that some cops stumbling through the woods.
So you knew this lad, right? You knew Tort. What kind of guy was he?
Tort was he's extremely committed to defending the woods from the police. Had moved to the woods and lived exclusively in the woods for over 9 months, and just was always cheerful, always thinking about the situation, always discussing politics with people, always strategizing and envisioning future, just really dedicated in this way, and also very brave, sitting up in a treehouse, just kind of unafraid of what the police were using the chemical weapons and rubber bullets that were being fired at their treehouse. It didn't faze them really. And so it was really it's a loss,
Yeah. Did you know that he carried a gun with him?
I was not aware of that.
I'm just really interested in this. I don't understand why the police would go in and do a raid in the forest, knowing how long it's been going ahead, and it has been violent. I'm not condemning anything. It's neither here nor there for me, but it has been violent. Molotovs were thrown in May, as you said. It just seems very odd to me that the police would go in armed, knowing all that, but then not have their body cams on. I don't know. It seems strange to me. Is that normal in Atlanta?
Well, yeah. So the specific police agency that shot and killed Tort is the Georgia State Patrol, and they don't wear body cameras ever, and they report to the governor and not to the city of Atlanta. So the governor of Georgia, this guy Brian Kemp, pretty far right kind of guy, and he's really made a lot of statements about how much he hates the forest defenders, how they're all terrorists, how we need to root out the criminal network, etc. And so he kind of sent in his personal police agency to be a part of this raid.
How is it that he was able to bypass the local police? Just because he's governor, or was there another reason for it?
Yeah, because they've there's an interagency. Yeah, I think they literally use the phrase mutual aid to describe the police agencies.
It's ironic.
So it's the statewide agencies have control of the situation on the ground, and they direct all the different police. But yeah, so it's in DeKalb County, and that police agency was allegedly not present inside the woods whatsoever. They do wear body cams, but none of that footage has been released of their day in the woods. But yeah, it's kind of emblematic of Georgia politics, where Atlanta is a radical, more leftist city, and then the state is more conservative. The state can supersede the city in some ways.
So it sounds to me then, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm just trying to understand all this because I don't know anything about the area. I mean, I know about the protests vaguely from what I've read and a few people I've spoken to, but I don't know about the policing or anything like that until you've mentioned it. It sounds to me that it's quite possible then that the local police were with these state trooper police when this happened, or no?
They said that they weren't.
They said they weren't, but it's possible that they were in the same area. They were on the same raid.
Yeah.
So convenient they weren't there. The only ones with the police cams. And I'm saying that, and I know people will hear it's like, oh, you don't like cops. Well, it's if you look at the history of American police shooting unarmed people or shooting people and covering it up, you'd be an absolute lunatic and frankly a liar to not question what actually happened here. And we've been seeing a lot in the media. The police have said he's a terrorist. He shot at them and they shot back. That might well be true. I don't know. And if it is true, that's what happens. You shoot at someone, you get shot back. But we're not hearing from the point of view of you lot, the people that knew Tort, the people that were around him every day, the people that were a part of this movement or are a part of this movement. So I want to hear from your point of view. What do you think happened? I know you don't know, but if you can, like, maybe share your theory, because you know this lad, you know, and I feel like not enough people are actually saying who he was.
Yeah. You know, I don't want to get too far into it just because it's just speculation.
Yeah.
You know, but Tort was known to speak about his commitment to nonviolence and how we had to win in the court of public opinion, and for that we had to, you know, remain nonviolent in a sense, like to a certain degree. And you know, that's on statements or on record, you know, with purporters or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that out there, and yeah. Also, you know, people who were in the woods reported hearing one single burst of gunfire, not shot and then a response.
Yep.
And there's that as well. And like I said before, you know, it's like the police are investigating themselves, you know. So
yeah, yeah. And just for I know already, I can already see the comments. Oh, he pledged himself to non-violence, but he carried a gun. Carrying a gun does not make you violent. Self-defense is your human right in whatever situation, whether it's legal or not legal. You are allowed to defend yourself from violence. Carrying a gun to defend yourself is not only someone's right, it's actually legal, as we said. It doesn't mean someone is going to use it. I know that people have various opinions on firearms and whatever, that's fine. But simply owning and having a gun, in my opinion, does not mean you are violent. So that out the way, how many times was Tort shot? Do we know yet? Has there been, you know, the record of that? Has it been put out there officially?
No, they haven't mentioned a single word about that. We do know that there was no request for first aid or medical attention to Tort whatsoever.
So he was dead straight away, basically.
There's just mention of, yeah, one trooper shot, and they asked for medical attention to him. Didn't mention that someone else had been shot.
Even if you shoot to kill, and someone has been killed, I think you have to, aren't you meant to, I could be wrong on this, but I'm pretty sure any police force is kind of meant to call in medical for that person just in case, no?
Yeah, absolutely, you're meant to. But, you know, these fucking guys, they don't give a shit about people they encounter in the woods.
Right. I mean, it shows malice straight up, in my opinion. Yeah. That does.
Yeah.
What's the situation like now? I know that there were clashes in Atlanta afterwards. I think a police car got set on fire. I think some equipment, like building equipment, got set on fire. What's been the response since this lad was killed?
Yeah, there's been a tremendous outpouring of support, actually, across the country and even internationally, and especially in Atlanta. There's some very somber vigils, including one in the woods, which is, you know, very emotional. Yeah, and there was on Saturday, January 22nd, maybe was on with the Saturday after the killing. Yeah, there's a demonstration downtown that went straight to the Atlanta Police Foundation's office building. Just, yeah, again, that nonprofit that's raising funds to build the police training facility. You know, just smashed in some of the doors and windows of that facility. Set some cop car on fire, smashed in some of the windows of the other funders of the project, like the Wells Fargo Bank, and then dispersed. And yeah, some people who were also arrested at that demonstration are also being charged with domestic terrorism, which is unprecedented in the U.S. That, you know, a lot of windows have been smashed at a lot of demonstrations in the U.S. over the last fucking forever, and no one's ever been charged with domestic terrorism for that. So, yeah, completely unprecedented there. And now there's 18 different people in Atlanta who have domestic terrorism charges, which is fucking a lot of people.
Why do you think they're coming down so heavy on this?
Yeah, I think this state is kind of backed into a corner because they see this popular movement in opposition to this facility, massive local support, is willing to take bold actions that actually stop them from being able to construct the facility. And so they have to use, you know, weapons of the state, which is extreme charges, you know, their guns, and their chemical weapons, and they're just lashing out because they feel like they're backed into a corner here. They're losing the battle to build this facility. So they're coming back over the top.
Yeah. What's the situation like now in the forest? Are people doubling down? Are they scared? I imagine it's a bit of a mix.
Yeah. So there's no active construction going on in the woods, and there's no permit for the city to work on construction right now. And one part of the woods, it has a stop work order. So like that's a legal thing issued by the city and the county that's like, you can't do any construction here. So that's kind of protecting some of the woods for the time being. There's still enough people on the ground to get a sense of what is happening, and could you know, get out an alert if there was construction equipment going on. And then outside of the immediate forest, there's just never been more people, I think, active in pressuring the funders of the project, the developers of the project, the construction companies involved in the project. All over the city, there's people activated, paying attention, and going after those responsible for this project.
Was there large scale like monkey wrenching taking place? Were people like attacking work equipment and stuff like that?
Yeah, there has been a lot of sabotage of equipment.
Mm-hmm.
You know, all claimed anonymously, and some of it with construction equipment left on the site, some of it with construction equipment that was used to work on the site and then housed elsewhere, some of it just construction equipment of companies working on it at their other sites or their offices. But yeah, there's a massive list of bulldozers, excavators, etc., that have been sabotaged.
Before we go, is there anything else you want to talk about regarding Tor? Obviously, he's been killed now, and a lot of people are just straight away, he's a terrorist. I've seen this kind of shit online. Is there anything you want to say about him?
You know, I want to say Tor was standing up for life on the planet, and paid for that with their life, you know. And I think a lot of people still can see what they were standing up for, you know, and be inspired by that. I also want to, you know, say it's disgusting, but the police continued chasing other tree sitters in the woods and continued cutting down trees even after they had murdered Tort on that day. Like, they didn't stop the rest of the operation. They kept going after people.
Same day.
Yeah. Yeah.
If people want to find out more about the situation, the defense of the Atlanta Forest, Stop Cop City, where do you recommend they do that?
There's Twitter, Instagram, Telegram, all defend the Atlanta Forest, and then there's also Instagram, Stop Cop City. There's also defendtheatlantaforest.org and stopcopcitysolidarity.org, which is a website that has a huge list of all the different people, places, corporations involved in building Cop City.
All right, mate. Thank you very much for that. Really appreciate it.
Yep. Thanks, Jake.
That was Sean speaking about the killing of the Atlanta Forest defender Tortuguita, also known as Tort, and the various situations surrounding that. Hopefully there will be an independent investigation into the killing. Not sure that's going to happen. From what I'm reading, some activists in Georgia have said that he was quote unquote assassinated in cold blood. So we're going to see what's happened. We'll keep anybody updated on what happens. If you like what we're doing here at Popular Front, trying to bring attention to underreported conflict situations, please do consider supporting us. There's lots of bonus content at patreon.com/popularfront. That's how we keep things moving forward. Also, if you want, you can buy merchandise at popularfront.shop. Believe it or not, a lot of that actually funds our documentaries. We have a new documentary out right now at youtube.com/popularfront. It's called Partisan 22. I think what's the YouTube title? I think it's Russia's anti-Putin underground. It's a documentary about literally that, anti-Putin Russian partisan saboteurs. It's been received well. People like it. Go and watch it if you want. Thank you very much to our sponsors. They are Oracle Coffee Shop in Portland, Oregon, USA. They're an independent coffee business selling only fair trade products. See them at 3875 South West Bond Avenue, 97239. Also, thank you to Grindcore House, a pair of independent coffee shops in Philadelphia, USA, one in South and one in West. Find them on social media at Grindcore House. And also thank you to Propagandopolis, an outlet selling and writing about historical conflict propaganda from around the world. You can buy prints at propagandopolis.com. Use a promo code POPULARFRONT10 for 10% off. Follow us on social media. Twitter at popularfront_, Instagram at popular.front, TikTok at popular.front, and of course the youtube.com/popularfront. Music in this episode, the intro was by Home and the outro was by Sam Black. See his music at samblackpf.com. Thank you very much to the high tier Patreons. They are Christian Bustamante, Mike Jones, Britt Richardson, Victor Villa, Daniel Verdin, Margosha, Rohan Irvin, Titus Perkins, Ryan Barbadillo, VS, Brian R, Evan Pank, Bradley Hope, Wizard Actual, Claire Hoffbauer, Benjamin Topper, Chongus Bongwater, Siddhartha O, Damien, Cameron Collins, Q Loves Cake. That's that fucking name, man. Nicholas Blomberg, Matthew Diffley, Claire, Liana, Robert, Sean, Christianovich, NTHG, Arthur Raphael Macias, Ethan Zwick, Kefir is the Mind Killer, Elise Middlefart, David McManus, Tom Petrie, James Leons, Bradley Davies, No Dogs No Hamsters, Brendan Crave, B, Drift, RX, Tiki Lover, Ben Marshall, Dallas Dunn, Shikhar Gupta, LD50 Seattle, K Glitter Vulcan, Bethany Swoveland, Adam H, Derivative Fool, Bottle of Water, Larson 8669, Ivan Julien, Bjorn Kirsten, DS, Michael O'Connor, Disgrunt, Jack Doherty, Nicholas Butter, JD, Jav, James Cully, Tynan Daly, Ethan, Shanklin the Painter, Fitz Madrid, Ed Coulthard, D San, Mike Barone, Ben, Liam Williams, Chris Cusimano, DZA, Georgia Arani, DR, Amy R, Rubicon, Frank Austin, Amelia Me, Christina Ravetti, Freya Northman, Neber, Noah, Andrew Hurley, Vida Provost, Brian McLaughlin, Tom Lochrin, Young Wasabi, Tony Bin, JL, Stephen Davila, Dan Dunham, Chad Walker, Lawrence Abrahams, What Bitcoin Did with Peter McCormick, Christopher Martin and Ryan Sandercock. Thank you all so much. Support us at patreon.com/popularfront.